Hey YouTubers! Welcome back to the channel, Culture Confederacy here. It's Friday, so happy Friday everybody. Now I know you've seen this photo. This is that guy who had the Confederate battle flag wandering around the Capitol building January 6th. That treasonous bastard. 30 days in the cooler. Isn't that what Colonel Klink would say on Hogan's Heroes? In the cooler. No light, no water, no food. Treason! Insurrection! Total BS! It's total BS. Now, this is really a reaction video to a video that Brian McClanahan did the other day. His reaction, well, really a reaction to this article that Brian McClanahan talked about at the New Republic by Thom Hartmann. Now, Thom Hartmann is supposedly the leading progressive of our time. He's what Era America was years ago. So in this article, which is over here, I'm just going to focus on this one part of the article. He's ranting and raving and complaining that if MAGA gets reelected, Trump gets back in office, that his supporters, these states in the South, these Republican states in the South, are going to resurrect the Confederacy. Again, total BS. But let's get to this court decision from SCOTUS today. Oh, this is just too good. So the Supreme Court ruled in favor of one of these January 6th defendants, Joseph Fisher, who I believe was a former police officer. And the court found that the DOJ went outside its scope, or the scope of the law or statute in question here. And when you have one of the liberal judges, Justice Jackson, siding with the conservatives on the court, it was a 6-3 decision, you know the DOJ is in trouble. You know that January 6th is basically a pile of crap. It had to be a setup. It had to have been a setup. So this is what Roberts said about the DOJ and this law here, which was originally implemented after the Enron scandal. Because at the time, there was a loophole in the law. The law stated that you could not instruct somebody else to destroy documents, but it didn't say anything about you yourself destroying documents. So that got changed. But Roberts wrote this: to prove a violation of Section 1512C2, the government must establish that the defendant impaired the availability or integrity for use in official proceeding of records, documents, objects, or, as we earlier explained, other things used in the proceeding or attempted to do so. The term otherwise, as in otherwise obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding, could not be used so broadly as to include trespassing. So the DOJ, here's what happened. The DOJ saw an opportunity here to go after these people, these MAGA supporters, and they thought they could do it by using this particular statute. And they thought they could just somehow broaden the horizon here, broaden the scope of this law, stretch it to its maximum to get these people, because they really have nothing, because you have to prove intent. You have to prove intent. But then you have Amy Coney Barrett, who dissented. So one of the conservative justices on the Supreme Court dissented. And I have a response here. Of course, this is at Breitbart. So Amy Coney Barrett said this, quote, Section 1512C2 is a very broad provision. Admittedly, events like January 6th were not its target. But statutes often go further than the problem that inspired them, and under the rules of statutory interpretation, we stick to the text anyway. In other words, the DOJ effed up here. They went beyond their bounds or their limits as an agency, federal agency, to go after these people, when probably what they engaged in was really a misdemeanor, trespassing. And you'd have to show the physical thing they used to obstruct whatever the proceeding was. So that's at Breitbart. But getting to this article here, going back to this article at the New Republic. Pardon my laptop here if it shakes. I've got it sitting, believe it or not, on the box. We do things bare bones here. So I don't try to use fancy graphics, epic soundtracks, or pretty boy camera angles, except maybe in this case where I'm trying to share something with you or part of an article with you. Or a photo of the Confederate battle flag being carried around the Capitol building, like that's some big deal. So it says here, this is according to Thom Hartmann, slave labor is replaced by the perpetual poverty and servitude of a $7.25 minimum wage, and red state laws are hostile to unions. Children are encouraged to leave school and enter the workplace in dangerous jobs like slaughterhouses. Well, as Brian McClanahan pointed out, he hasn't seen any photos lately, any posters rather lately, of people asking children to work in slaughterhouses. Or local governments asking children to go work in slaughterhouses or in textile factories or whatever the case may be. I mean, for that, you have to go back before there were child labor laws in the 1840s and 1850s in Victorian England. Quality education becomes exclusively the province of the rich and white as public schools are gutted by voucher programs and college tuition explodes. Well, education should really be handled at the state level. States should have the right to choose what they want to teach in their schools, not the federal government. The federal government needs to stay out of it. Now, getting back to the minimum wage, he's complaining about the minimum wage being $7.25 an hour in these red states. Well, Florida, their minimum wage, I believe, is $12 an hour. Where I live, it's $12 an hour. I think Nevada this year, starting July 1st, is going to go to $12 an hour. Now, granted, Nevada's not in the South, but you know what I'm saying here. And it was the federal government that implemented the minimum wage to begin with. 1938, have it over here. Let me pull this up. Now, FDR tried to pass something through for a minimum wage, I think in 1933, 34, but it was found unconstitutional. And then they created the national minimum wage with what they call the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, in 1938, citing Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which allows Congress to have the power to regulate commerce. But technically, there's nothing in the Constitution that spells out that Congress has the power to set a federal minimum wage. So it's an implied power. Maybe the states are the best to handle this. Seriously. So getting back to the article here, healthcare is a luxury only available to the wealthy as insurance becomes unaffordable. Oh, before I forget, there was another case that came down today. SCOTUS cited, no, I think it was yesterday. No, it was today. They did two decisions today. The first one that came out was SCOTUS sided with these fishermen in New England against these federal regulations. And what's funny about that is Florida, when it produced its secession document, which I don't think was ever really published, but when they created their secession document, one of the things they talked about were the fisheries. I'm from Florida originally. That's where I was born and raised. That's not where I live now, but that's where I was born and raised. And the fishing economy, or the fishing industry, is a major part of Florida's economy. Or anywhere you live along the coast or up in Maine or that area, it's a crucial part of that state's economy. So this is an issue that goes way back. I mean, way back. So healthcare is a luxury only available to the wealthy. It becomes unaffordable. Republican governors refuse to expand Medicaid, and medical practices are acquired by hedge funds and converted to concierge practices with $3,000 a year annual fees. Mr. Hartmann, ever heard of freedom of choice here? You as a consumer can choose whatever medical plan you want. Go to whatever insurance company you want to buy a policy. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. And I personally think we should get rid of Medicaid and Social Security, Medicare, and keep it just for those who absolutely, I mean absolutely need it. Tighten the screws on that. Make it tougher to get Medicare or Medicaid. not because you're not feeling good one day. You need some antidepressant medication or antidepressants. Come on now. Really, I should not have to support your ass. I'm sorry, I should not have to support your ass. Talks about Republican propaganda machines. Women, people of color, and religious minorities are made culturally and legally subordinate to white Christian men. Oh my God. Mr. Hartmann, didn't we have something called the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Are we living in 1955? Are we living in 1860? Where's this guy been at? And here's a creme de la creme. And of course, they want to preserve the Confederate names and monuments still extant and bring back the monuments that have been removed. As we saw on January 6th, the Confederate battle flag is one of their favorite totems. Oh my God. Mr. Hartmann, I would kindly like to point out to you that the very first flag used by the Confederacy over the Confederate batteries at Fort Sumter was not the Confederate battle flag, it was the Bonnie Blue, which goes back to 1810 with the settlers of the Republic of West Florida that first unfurled that flag to protest, declare their independence from Spanish rule. And the Don't Tread on Me flag, also known as the Gadsden flag, it's one that says Don't Tread on Me, that's got the rattlesnake, was designed by Christopher Gadsden, who was a brigadier commander or general in the Continental Army, and he was from South Carolina. It isn't coincidental that in 1860, South Carolina was the first state to secede, but the truth is we actually had two secessions in the United States. The first one was in 1776 from Great Britain, and the second was with the South in 1860. Sounds to me like Mr. Hartmann needs to go back and study his history. So I thought I'd share this with you today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Try to throw everything I can in this episode here. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. You can also go to X, Culture Confederacy at Culture Confed 1 on X, or find me at Instagram, hashtag Jason Composes, because I write music in my spare time. That's why I have this crusade to preserve great art, music, history, and culture, not tear down everything you disagree with. And we try to do it with no fancy graphics, epic soundtracks, or pretty boy camera angles, except in this case here where I'm trying to share something with you, as I said earlier. So thank you for being with me. Y'all have a great Friday, and I'll catch you next time. God bless.